Thanks to advances in screening technologies over the past 50 years, cervical cancer has gone from one of the leading causes of death in U.S. women to now one of the more rare. However, there is much more organizations such as Kaiser Permanente can do to further decrease the incidence of this disease. Hello, my name is Andrew Loberg, and this past summer I had the pleasure of interning with the business consulting and implementation team at Kaiser Permanente. This team serves as an internal consulting group serving the Southern California Permanente Medical Group. My main project this summer aimed at further decreasing the cervical cancer incidence rate among members in Southern California through a new screening technology that is better able to detect cervical cancer. Given that Kaiser Permanente serves over 2.1 million Southern California women between the ages of 25 and 64, analyzing, proposing, and implementing a new screening protocol in 10 weeks was not feasible. Given this, the team and I decided to first focus on understanding the implications to change the current protocol. As stated, my main objective this past summer was to understand the implications of the proposed changes in protocol from our current system for cervical cancer screening to a new screening approach titled Primary High-Risk HPV Screening, or Primary hrHPV Screening for short. In order to implement this, there are a number of implications we must better understand, as shown here. SCPMG's current practice for routine cervical cancer screening is simultaneous collection of both a pap smear and a human papillomavirus test, also known as an HPV test. This screening method is called co-testing. Since the 1980s, epidemiologists have studied the role of HPV in the development of cervical cancer and have concluded that nearly all cervical cancers are a result of an HPV infection. Therefore, co-testing has proved very successful in decreasing the incidence of cervical cancer since its inception across SCPMG in the early 2000s. As you can see, different age groups receive different screening methodologies in this current practice. In 2014, the FDA approved the use of high-risk HPV testing as a primary screening for cervical cancer. As discussed, this practice is called primary hrHPV screening. Additionally, in October of this year, the United States Preventative Services Task Force graded the use of primary hrHPV screening in A, further strengthening the recommendation to switch to this new screening methodology. Primary hrHPV screening in women aged 30 to 65 removes the use of a pap smear as part of routine screening, as done currently with the co-testing methodology. Should a patient show a positive test result for one of the many high-risk HPV types, either a reflex pap smear, also known as cytology, or a colposcopy is conducted to further investigate the potential development of cervical cancer, as shown in the center diagram. The U.S. Preventative Services Task Force recommends that primary hrHPV screening be completed every 5 years. As you can see, there are many advantages to switching to primary hrHPV screening, including that it is FDA approved and is a more sensitive test than both co-testing and conducting a pap smear alone. This method also has the potential for future self-collection, which could potentially improve access and patient satisfaction. The team only identified 2 disadvantages to primary hrHPV screening, which were the fact that only one vendor is approved by the FDA, and that primary hrHPV screening increases the volume of colposcopies. Switching to primary hrHPV screening would only affect those aged 30 to 65. For this age group, we would expect to see a drastic decrease in the use of cytology, as this would no longer be a part of routine cervical cancer screening. This will improve workflow in the regional labs, but may have some workforce implications for the organization. As mentioned previously, we estimated that reliance on primary hrHPV screening will show an increase in the use of colposcopy by 20%. We would expect that visit volumes for routine cervical cancer screenings to remain the same, since the screening frequency of 5 years would be the same. In addition, the organization would need to purchase new equipment and also change to a new collection method to align with the FDA-approved standards. As explained in this presentation, primary hrHPV screening not only is a more effective test at detecting cervical cancer, but can also generate tremendous cost savings for the organization in the long run, as the reliance on cytology is greatly reduced and early detection of cervical cancer increases. Although switching to a new protocol for the entire Southern California region would be a huge effort, I recommend that the organization consider implementing primary hrHPV screening, as it has the potential to greatly improve quality of care and patient satisfaction while also decreasing costs for the organization. With this information, myself, along with the business consulting and implementation team, plan to facilitate a number of meetings with key stakeholders across the Southern California Permanente Medical Group. In these meetings, we will plan the appropriate next steps in implementing the recommended switch to primary high-risk HPV screening for Kaiser Permanente members in Southern California. Thank you for your time, and should you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me.